Okay.
and play it.
All right.
Legally.
Okay. So, moving on to our next topic at hand, and let me start this up. There is my video. Here it is. Oh, microtransactions and loot boxes. I thought we were away from you, but no, you popped up in the news.
Oh no.
That's always going to be in the news, but this specifically is something that I caught recently that must be talked about. This is reported off of theguardian.com, written by, where's the author at? Kaza McDonald. Belgium is right to class video game loot boxes as child gambling. Yesterday, the Belgian Minister of Justice, Koen Geens, announced the result of the investigation that the country's gaming commission conducted into video game loot boxes, a mechanic that lets players pay real money for a chance at winning virtual items. It found that 3 popular games, Overwatch, Counter-Strike Global Offensive, and FIFA 18, were in violation of gambling legislation. This is a significant finding because controversy over loot boxes has been raging for the past at least 6 months. Are they actually a form of gambling? Worse, are they a form of gambling that is particularly appealing to children? Belgium's Gaming Commission has decided that yes, they are, and the publishers in question should remove loot boxes from their games or face fines. EA and Blizzard, publishers to the games in question, did not respond to requests for comment on how they plan to comply. A Valve spokesperson said that the company is happy to engage with the Belgium Gambling Commission and answer any questions they may have. There might be no financial incentive to buying loot boxes. You never win any money, but they are still a game of chance. A dialogue with the sector is necessary, said Geens. It is often children who come into contact with such systems, and we cannot allow that.
I'm curious. Can somebody look up and see if claw machines are available in Belgium?
I don't know. I don't know. And even if you can go that route, the reason why gacha machines are not banned because of gambling, because they you can, first of all, you can visibly see the items are in the box or in the machine. So that
all right, that's old man talk. Continue.
But they have a more visual representation of how of like what you could win.
I'm just gonna throw this out there. Video games give you a visual representation of what you could win. All of them do. Every single game that I have ever personally played that has had loot boxes or a loot box type system shows you in some fashion, way, or form exactly what you could get in those. Does it show you on the screen in which you can buy them? No. Does it show you on another screen in how you can buy them? Yes. And here's the problem that I have with people and their attitude towards loot boxes. It's this attitude that somehow, when it comes to the gambling aspect, that somehow by buying a loot box that has random items in it, that's gambling. And again, I point out Gachapon, I point out claw machines, I point out a lot of games that kids have access to in public settings that are forms of gambling. But those are fine. Why? What makes them different than loot boxes in a video game? Not to mention, as I've pointed out numerous times before, loot boxes have to be purchased with a credit card. Adults are the only ones who have a credit card. Again, this is such a moot point to me to sit there and say, oh, they're geared towards children. You do realize, Gambling Commission in Belgium, that the average age of gamers is between the age of 18 and 35, not fucking 5 and 17. You know this, right, Belgium? Oh, you don't, because you're just a bunch of old men on a fucking panel who think they know what they're talking about because they just see random items in a box and you pay for them. Well, that's gambling. Morons.
So here's something I wanted to point out, and also in the article, it also goes into like if they don't pay the fine, they actually will serve jail time, so they can actually jail people who ignore the fines. But I wanted to point out, and we have this discussion over and over again about loot boxes, and it's
you
always
want to get me fired up, Josh. This is how you do it.
And
this topic pisses me off.
And we've went over this over and over again. But the one thing I do want to point out, since this entire debacle has happened with loot boxes and isn't gambling, microtransactions and whatnot, is that game companies are now scared. are now
Sorry.
are now more than ever scared of this idea of putting it in their games. EA, I can't remember where, but I remember hearing that EA is very spooked about what happened and is like not touching this at all, like for future games. And other game companies come out and said like, yeah, we don't have no loot boxes in our game. Like, don't hate us. So what happened is, because of everything that has transpired with this controversy, with the way that this rolled out, that game companies, publishers are going to be staying away as far as they can. Recently, WB Games took out the microtransactions in the Lord of the Rings game. They recently took out.
I was gonna say this to you a long time ago, Anthony. The most benefit that you might see from developers being afraid of putting loot boxes in their games is you might see longer development times for games, less money being spent per year on the development of a game because they're taking longer to make it. You might see a transition of that, which ultimately is great for the consumer because, let's be honest, there's just too many games to play right now.
Yeah,
I still have, and I'm not joking when I say this, Anthony, I have Far Cry 5 and Extinction ready to be played, but haven't played them because I just have too much stuff and video games to play.
Agreed.
That is a problem. That is a huge problem. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're trying to shorten development time. They're trying to crank out these games and then subsidize that cost that they're using because it costs more in loot boxes. And that cost could be subsidized and changed. It absolutely could. But when you're in, again, a big competing industry, you have to make content like that. You have to stay relevant.
Yeah.
And a huge aspect to that, and I've pointed this out before too, the cultural osmosis of everybody enjoying content is on a fast, like with YouTube and Netflix and all these systems and stuff in place where I want to watch an episode specifically of Animaniacs, and I'm going to search for it on the internet. You can do that right now without any struggle. And so as a whole, and I'm not saying this is kids, this is adults or old people, everybody's put into this. Our attention spans have shortened.
Agreed.
You go and watch certain movies nowadays. Like, let's say Infinity War or Last Jedi. Great movies. Some would argue with me, but that's fine. Whatever, I don't care. Great movies. But look how they're filmed. Each segment of characters is less than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Each segment of characters is less than 5 minutes. Think about that. Think about how films are made today because of our short attention span.
Right. So, and is that, that kind of a deeper conversation?
Right, Jason.
Is that a deeper conversation of, like, as a society that we're just getting dumber? Is it just because the way that the world works now?
No. It doesn't mean any of that. It doesn't mean we're getting dumber. It doesn't mean it just means that's just how entertainment is evolving. That's all that means. But because of that, Anthony, you're seeing more blockbusters come out every year. You're seeing more video game blockbusters come out every year. You're seeing I'm trying to remember what it was called, what this analyst was talking about, but basically oversaturation of content.
Yeah.
And people are going to start getting content fatigue. So hopefully the benefit from this loot box fiasco is that developers are going to take less time to make games.
Exactly. That's what I hope for, especially because, like, there's definitely a lot of games that people, like, they don't have, well, honestly, nobody has time to play everything they want to play in a given year. I mean, you could, but, like, there's tons of games out there that are out there right now. And, from the top publishers.
You could 10 years ago. You could absolutely do that 10 years ago. True.
Very true. That was before Steam, and that was before indies were able to launch their games on multiple platforms.
Yep.
But will we get a situation where it's going to be like that with these taking time? It helps. I don't think it's going to really change much in terms of, like, releasing games, But if it gives us more time to play games, that's great. It's awesome.
Well, and again, I use the term like you might see it loosely because it might not happen either. Like you might still see the biggest problem with gaming being the oversaturation because, as EA has stated, the loot boxes aren't going anywhere, and they see a huge financial turnout from loot boxes. So get used to them.
Yeah. I mean, like, as much as I am against loot boxes and microtransactions, not all, but some, like,
I've stated before, I'm not against or for loot boxes. I'm against people not using their brains. I'm against people going, I hate loot boxes because I don't want to spend extra money on a game. Okay, you don't have to. These are all optional.
Right.
Except for what Battlefront 2 was doing originally. But again, as I've stated, like, the benefit was like, do you want your grenade to have a 0.5 radius or a 0.6 radius? Okay, so the fucking definition of needless. Got it.
Yeah. I was going to say something, but you interrupted me. God damn it. I lost my train
I'm
of thought.
sorry. This topic, you know this topic and how it gets me, dude.
I know it does. Regardless, that is your update on that, and that'll be ever a thing for the next, I don't know how long, years.
We'll be talking about it again and again and again and again until my head explodes like that scene in Scanners.
Yeah, for sure. Moving on to a much more happier thought. Nintendo. So Nintendo recently